Namaste, Hari Om, Tat Sat, Jai Ma, Ram Ram Ram. So this will be the first of maybe many videos that I share. It's just like I have these topics sort of moving through my mind stream for the last, I don't know how many years, if not decades. And I just would like to share these things, open up conversation, maybe provoke listeners to do their own research and contemplation. First of all, I'm not an authoritative figure on these topics. I'm just sharing what I've learned through my own practice, my own meditation, my own contemplation, experience with teachers, and so on and so forth. I want to encourage you guys to do your own research and study and contemplation, come to your own understanding through your own efforts. This stuff is going to be probably for the most part fairly simple and not too in-depth, because these topics, I mean, you can spend lifetimes studying them individually and go into the nuances. So let's just try to keep it lighthearted, enjoyable and fun, or I find it fun at least, So anyway, so this topic is something that I've been tossing around for years, and it's a topic of essentially emptiness through the lens of the Mahayana Tibetan Buddhism, and versus and compared to Advaita Vedanta teachings on non-duality through the Indian lens or the Hindu lens. So, we can start with, say, we'll start with Tibetan Buddhism. So in Tibetan Buddhism, in the Mahayana tradition, there's teachings on emptiness, and you can find them in the Heart Sutras and the Prajnaparamita Sutras. So it's this teachings on emptiness, and it's called emptiness is also called shunyata. So this suggests that all phenomena are devoid of inherent existence and are instead interdependent and interconnected. So what does this inherent existence mean? Inherent existence means, in this context, essentially nothing exists on its own without other aspects. So, for instance, this pen is a pen. Obviously, you write with it, but it could not be here without the different parts that make it up, or without the many people that were involved in making this pen, or even it being here on my desk involved, countless things, my entire life leading up to it. So this pen doesn't exist on its own. And actually, you can do contemplation or meditation in order to develop this experience and understanding of the interconnectedness and interdependence of all phenomena, right? So this is helping one come to a greater understanding of what the Tibetan Buddhists would call shunyata, or emptiness. So emptiness doesn't mean nothingness. Emptiness means that all things, all phenomena are devoid of inherent existence. So that means they don't exist by themselves. They're actually interdependent and depend on essentially everything else to be there. So they're, in that sense, devoid of their own essential reality, in a sense, because they depend on everything else to make it. So it's not, self-sustaining, right? And you can recognize through these meditations that everything is dependent on everything else. If you really break it down, you can go into these things in great detail. Like if you think about your food before you eat it, you can imagine how this food got to the store, on a truck, and then you can start breaking down anything about that truck and the driver or the road it was on, the shoes the driver was wearing, where those shoes came from, where those laces came from, the people who made those laces for the shoes, and you can just go deeper and deeper and deeper. And if you go deep enough, you recognize that all of these things that are in our world are necessary in order to make everything else possible. So there's this interconnectedness and interdependence that makes all phenomena possible. So we can cultivate a direct experiential understanding of this principle, and this involves this analytical meditation to ponder the origination of all phenomena, or the development of mindfulness to observe the interrelated nature of experience itself. So the objective of this practice is to perceive reality of emptiness and interdependence directly, leading to the release from attachment, aversion, ignorance, like craving for things that you want, avoiding things that you don't want, which causes suffering, or is the cause of samsara in this Tibetan Buddhism. And once you recognize directly that all things are interdependent, all things are interconnected, nothing happens independently, it creates this liberation of energy, and this understanding which results in nirvana. So in the Tibetan Buddhism, they're talking about liberation or enlightenment through nirvana, right? And samsara is like this ignorance, and ignorance is caused by grasping and avoiding things, essentially, and not understanding the true nature of reality. By identifying with these things that we're attached to, and not identifying with things we're pushing away, we're creating this friction in your experience, in your consciousness, right? But when you recognize that all things are interconnected, all things are interdependent, you start to see that what you're grasping for is not so different from what you're pushing away, and what you're pushing away is not so different from what you're grasping at. And so all of a sudden the struggle dissolves in a sense, and there's this nirvana. So these practices are actually both Advaita Vedanta and Tibetan teachings, the Mahayana on shunyata, or emptiness. They're not so different, and they're from what I gather, both non-dual in their nature. So Advaita Vedanta focuses on self-inquiry, right? So self-inquiry, or Atma Vichara, is basically focuses on the concept of the Atman, or the individual soul, and Brahman, which is the totality, or the big self, or to be one. Like God and self are not separate. Or like the divine and the individual are not separate. And this separation, again, arises due to ignorance. And ignorance, or avidya, so non-truth, results from incorrect understanding, essentially. Through identifying with things that come and go, identifying with relative reality instead of absolute truth. Okay, so both of these practices are bringing us to a place experientially and directly of truth, and truth is defined as that which is not changing. Okay, so in Advaita Vedanta, we talk about the Atman, which is the soul or the individual, and Brahman, which is the God or the divine, as essentially being one. It's just like the Atman pops out. It's like an ocean. So you have the ocean, you have waves, and then you have the drops, or the spray that comes off the waves. Even the waves themselves appear to be different and separate from the ocean itself, but just give it some time, and that wave will calm down, or the spray will come back down, and they will be one again. So the water, or the wave, or the spray, or the drop is not different from the ocean. The ocean is not different from the drop. So the method in Advaita Vedanta is self-inquiry, or Atma Vichara. So this is inquiring into the nature of the self, or the individual, the jiva, or the Atman, the soul, to find out directly and experientially who I am or who you are, right? So this dispels ignorance, and it involves deep and continuous introspective questioning. And this question often is simply, who am I, right? And so you sit with it, and you go into a deep place of introspection and contemplation, and you ask, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And through that, you can go through a process of elimination, potentially, where you recognize that all things that come and go can't be you, because you can see that, you can witness it. There's something there that's always before it, like from young age all the way up to very old age. There's some part of you that sees it all come and go. Like your name can be changed. Your status, social status can change, your partners can change, your job can change, even your gender can change. Everything in phenomena can change, but there's something that is present through it all. The sense of beingness, the sense of self, the sense of I, or even that which observes I, is there. Precedes it, is before it, holds space for all of it. Even space itself is observed in this, you could call it consciousness or awareness, but those are just terms to not get caught up in. So I'm trying to keep it somewhat simple, but also, go dive in a little bit here. But what I'm trying to get at is to find and share that what I'm seeing in most traditions and wisdom traditions throughout the world is that there's more similarities than differences, and the outward appearance of these traditions often looks different. What they wear is different, the ceremonies are different, the language is different, but the culmination of the practices often lends to the truth, which is undifferentiated, which is undivisible, which is not separate. And there are some practices which will lead you to specific different places, but in the context of Tibetan Buddhist Mahayana teachings on Shunyata, emptiness, and the Indian Hindu teachings on Advaita Vedanta of self-inquiry, of Atma Vichara, to me, it seems like these are bringing us to a very similar place, if not the same place. So the goal in Advaita Vedanta is to realize our true nature, to not be separate from that of the divine. The ultimate reality leads us, or recognizing and experiencing directly this ultimate reality brings us to liberation, or moksha, where we transcend the nature of duality. So both of these practice in Tibetan Buddhism, when we contemplate interdependence and interconnectedness, recognizing that all the things we crave and all the things we avoid are actually essentially connected and not separate, we naturally, through that process, become released from attachment, craving, and aversion, achieve this nirvana, or this evenness, this mindfulness, through the practice of self-inquiry, recognizing that essentially we're not anything individually, but we are that Brahman that is holding space for all things that appear, and all things appear, all things last, all things dissolve, and all this is in a sense witnessed by consciousness, awareness, Brahman. We gain moksha, or nirvana. So both traditions aim for a profound realization that liberates one from suffering. They both approach it differently. Advaita Vedanta has self-inquiry, focuses on discerning the true self from the false self, leading to the recognition of the non-dual Brahman. In contrast, Tibetan Buddhism's meditations on interdependence and interconnectedness seeks to understand the nature of reality through the lens of emptiness, and dependent origination, right? So this is a big things here. There's two main differences. Is this meditation on dependent origination or emptiness, the interconnectedness of everything, interdependence of everything, leading to nirvana, or the practice of self-inquiry to recognize essentially what we are not through discerning and seeing that all these things are coming and going, recognizing that the individual self, the deepest sense of self, which is viewing all these things, is no different from Brahman. And again, this is a very simplified version of all this information, and this is just me contemplating it, and my own understanding deepens as we go, and I just want to, humbly offer, whatever my capacity is to you all, and hopefully that there's some benefit to it, and it's not just causing more noise or confusion. Truly, I can't help personally but see that there's more connectedness and interdependence and interconnectedness of things than there is separation, and so like in the Tibetan Buddhism, this interconnectedness, interdependence, and this Atma Vichara, in this understanding of the true self, recognizing that essentially the self and God are not different. It is said that God, Guru, and self are the same, right? So once you recognize directly and experientially your true self, you are recognizing and experiencing God and Guru. And this doesn't mean small self. And that's a whole other topic that's very much connected. But I'm trying to keep this discussion short, and hopefully not so much that it's just overwhelming. And hopefully I'm not waffling or rambling too much. But these are things that I personally find incredibly interesting. And I felt that, I'm sure there's tons of people, and I know there's many people out there sharing this stuff, but maybe I'll reach someone or a group of people or many people who wouldn't have heard it or contemplated it or found it interesting or found it relevant otherwise. So I humbly offer this to you, to the Guru's feet, and may all beings benefit from this in some way. Namaste, Hari Om, Tat Sat, Ram Ram Ram, Jai Ma.